All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome to a special episode of Talking Cardboard on this wonderful May the 4th. So May the 4th be with you all. Celebrating Star Wars Day, in case people couldn't tell. Some people understood the assignment, some didn't. It's okay.
It's light and dark side.
I mean, we'll go with that. Mm-hmm. And then
Corey
just representing the channel, so that's great.
That's fine. No, that counts. You're good.
Okay, yeah.
But yeah, big group today. We've got Ryan, Nick, myself, John, Church, and Corey.
Hello.
Yeah, the whole cast. And got some pretty good topics. This is our, fourth episode of Let's Talk Cardboard?
Yep.
You can explain that.
Fourth episode of Let's Talk Cardboard on May the 4th, Star Wars Day, so that kind of lined up perfectly. But yeah, Let's Talk Cardboard is a new segment where on every episode we discuss basically questions and comments that we get each and every week in the following episode. So if you want to leave comments or any questions below in the comments section, feel free to do so, and we will do our best to answer them in either the next following episode or maybe 2 weeks from that episode. So that's kind of the whole idea of this segment, is to get the community more involved and to get our viewers more involved, and it's been a lot of fun so far.
Yeah, and today we're going a little off script because no one asked us to do the first list we're going to look at today. But the first thing is top 5 Star Wars games.
Yes.
Just seemed fitting to do that today, right?
I think so.
Why?
Why? Yeah. No, we already explained that.
Okay.
So is this list of 5 games, is this ranked in any particular order, or are these just like what we think are the 5 best Star Wars games?
I would argue that we do have a rating system here, top 5, but this is what we think best fits as a Star Wars game. Not necessarily ranked in order of our favorites per se, but I mean, sort of. There's a balance in there. It's both we took into our favorites that we like to play, plus what we feel has a very good theme to it and actually plays decent.
Yeah.
And there's a balance to the Force as well, so we thought it fitting to do so.
Yeah.
Yes.
Exactly.
So should we start off with number 5? What do we got? Number 5 is Outer Rim. So Outer Rim is a Fantasy Flight game, kind of surprisingly.
Do you want it?
Yeah, let's pull it off the shelf. Outer Rim, so I think most of us have played it, some of us have not. It was definitely one of my most anticipated games before it came out to give it a shot, and I think it does pour the Star Wars theme into it very well. It's kind of like, what's that other kind of open world game, Nick, that you have?
Oh yeah, like Zaya. It's very much like Zaya. It's like a Star Wars Zaya. Very good.
Very much like a Star Wars Zaya, but a little bit less sprawling than Zaya, where you can build out your own ships, you can kind of build out your characters, you get a kind of an asymmetric feel to everything, and you're going out and trying to complete missions and do bounties and this and that, and it pours through a little bit. It's not like a perfect representation of necessarily what I would have liked to see in a Star Wars game, but it does it fairly well. Anyone else has? I know John has played it, but
Yeah. I really enjoy it. I think you get the feel of kind of traveling around the galaxy, and it's not necessarily asymmetrical, but you've got a lot of different things that you can do and different avenues you can take. It feels very exploratory and more of an experience than necessarily like a competitive game. I mean, obviously it is a game, but I like a lot of the Star Wars characters that they tie in, a lot of the crossover, a lot of the things you can do with this. And if we're looking at our top 5 list, I think 5 and 4 are probably my favorites that we've got going on. This is one of my favorite Star Wars games. It feels very Star Wars-y. And I mean, not that the other games on the list don't, but I really enjoy all the things that this game has to offer.
Yeah, we should note too, and Corey and I were talking about this, and Nick, 5 and 4 are also the only multiplayer Star Wars games that are kind of really out there within the last 5 to 8 years.
Yeah.
All the other games kind of were produced as a 1v1 head-to-head matchup type game with multiplayer kind of added later as a side thought. So definitely agree with that, and that's why this is definitely on there, because it fits that getting a group together and exploring the galaxy.
Yeah, this is one of 2, maybe one of 3 different Star Wars games that you can play more than 2 players, so definitely keep that in mind. And this is another game where it is competitive, like George said, but it doesn't really feel like you have to win the game to have fun in it.
Yeah.
You're building out your ship, you're doing upgrades and kind of exploring the galaxy, like George said too, and that's kind of where the majority of the fun is in this game. Not necessarily trying to do well, but just going out and seeing what happens. So I do appreciate that in Outer Rim. Any other comments?
Yeah, it's been on my list of games that I want to play for a while. When it was first announced, it was definitely something that I immediately was considering buying, and I've been hesitant to buy it whenever I see it's on sale because John has a copy here, so it's
and the expansion.
And the expansion, so there's always that challenge. But yeah, I mean, it definitely catches my attention and looks like a game that I feel I would enjoy playing.
Ryan, do you have thoughts on this one?
I have not played it, unfortunately.
Okay.
But he's going to.
All right. Yep. Stay tuned in the rest of the live stream today because we're getting this one to the table.
All right.
What's number 4 on the list?
So let's toss that one over to you, Church.
Oh, all right. Number 4 is Imperial Assault. This one, I think, if I remember correctly, John, this is one of the first games we got to the table when Talking Cardboard was almost in like its infancy stage.
Definitely.
But this was at a few houses ago for you, and we brought this to the table. It was such a fun experience. It's a skirmish style game, and you've got missions where one person's playing as like the Imperial side, and you're setting up the story a little bit, and then everybody else is rebel players. And you're trying to complete these missions or these... what is each session called? Do you remember? Does it have a specific name?
Oh, man, I know the overarching thing's a campaign, a scenario.
A scenario,
yep.
And it just... The setup takes a while, but there's so much replayability. There's so much light role-playing in it that you can get into your character. You feel very autonomous with what you want to do. And there's just almost unlimited fun. And every time we try running through one of these, it's so much fun. I absolutely love this. This is, out of the list of 5 that we have, this is probably my favorite Star Wars game. It feels incredibly Star Wars-y. There's so much dynamic interactions. Everybody's got something they can do. And I love the experience. Excellent table presence. I can't gush about this enough.
I know you've both played this a little bit. Not a ton.
I like it a lot. I mean, it's probably my favorite iteration of this type of game, just because how much I love Star Wars. But like Church says, it does take a lot of setup, which is definitely a drawback. I mean, all of the top 3 games that we have get to the table without much trouble at all, so they'd be a default for me to play over this most of the time, just because it takes so long to set up, but it is very fun.
Yeah, and that's something to mention too if anyone is interested in playing this style of game, is that to get the full experience, you do have to have a live Imperial player directing it, kind of like a DM.
They do have an app now, but...
They do. They have an app. It's mediocre at best. Other games have done it better, which hopefully that means they'll eventually spruce theirs up. But I would still argue having the Imperial player is what really makes or break this. And they can kind of, judge the ebb and flow of the game so that people aren't losing interest or feel like, the Empire is spiraling out of control, getting too powerful. And you really do have to do that because it is challenging for the rebel heroes to win their missions sometimes, and you're just trying to find the best solution to do, the best you can or make the most credits or experience so that you can improve for the next mission.
Yeah, I'll echo kind of the comment too that this is designed out of the box meant for 2 to 5. I played with the app actually with my friends via Tabletop Simulator. There's an amazing mod on Tabletop Simulator for Imperial Assault, which actually
speeds things up.
Well, it speeds things up, and it's like well done. There's miniatures. There's a lot of anyway. Point being, tried the app while playing with my friends. We could play just pure co-op, and that was actually a pretty fun experience. But since it wasn't originally intended that to be played that way, I do think that's something that makes it a little more challenging for me to want to play because I prefer more of a full co-op experience with the game. And with that said, the Descent system, which this game was based around, came out with their 3rd edition, which then was fully co-op using an app. So potentially, maybe they would down the road do a 2nd edition of Imperial Assault using making it fully cooperative like they did with the Descent 3rd edition, because the 2nd edition was the same, where you needed to have the one dungeon master type player. So.
Yeah, this is definitely the biggest, more sprawling table presence type of game. Maybe the biggest on the list other than one other game we're going to talk about later. But yeah, definitely takes up a lot of table space, a lot of different tiles that you're throwing out, and like Nick said, it does take kind of based on the mechanisms of the Descent system, but also the Mansions of Madness system too. So if you've played Mansions of Madness or Descent and really love those games, and you want something with Star Wars theme pasted onto it, this is pretty much an exact replica of that. So
and honestly, I know that a lot of times it's difficult if you've got one versus many. When I've been the Imperial player, I think I've had the most fun with that. And it's not necessarily trying to win and crush, because the game is set up where it's supposed to be a struggle for the Rebel players. But if, as the Imperial, when you're deciding what extra units you get, and you're trying to come up with a good story and not always just making sure you got enough credits for Darth Vader every time, but if you're trying to tell a good story, it's so much fun. And what's the guy that Dan had? Was it Biv Bodrick?
Oh, yeah.
This was years ago, and we still remember the legacy of Biv Bodrick. Yeah, just so many fun stories from it. I get a new appreciation for how strong a lot of these seemingly bit like Imperial characters, or what is that cat, the Nexu? Is that what it's called?
Oh, yeah, yep.
Like, that
Nexu
is really strong in this game, but you see it for, 2 minutes in the Star Wars movies.
Yeah.
So you just think, oh, this is a throwaway, just, cannon fodder. But it's not. It's actually strong in all the different types of Imperial troopers and stuff like that. I think this really expanded my appreciation for the depth of the Star Wars universe and different missions that help to accentuate these different characters. It really deepens my Star Wars experience. So I really enjoy this one.
All right. And it's probably going to be hard to see because it is a smaller box. But anyway, number 3 is Star Wars Unlimited. This is a new trading card game just released back in the end of March, I believe.
Yep.
Only one set out so far, but it's really hit with the community. It shares a lot of influence from previous games like Star Wars Destiny, even kind of the old Decipher CCG, and obviously takes some guidance from all the TCGs that have come before, like Magic and whatnot. But it's been a blast. You essentially just pit hero versus or leader versus leader, regardless if that's a mix of heroes, villains, or something in between. The deck building's been great. You're focused on these 4 different aspects and how that works together to play your cards, although that doesn't technically limit you from putting a different aspects card in your deck. There's just a penalty. But the mechanics are super simple, super straightforward. You're essentially taking an action, then your opponent takes an action. It goes back and forth until you've conceded the phase. And your ultimate goal is to destroy the opponent's base, and that's really all I can say about it.
Yeah, and it has really evolved off of many different trading card games, like John said, and even with Lorcana recently, with the whole not getting land screwed or mana screwed.
Right, because you just assign resources during certain phases of the game, so you always have the opportunity to increase that pool you have, and sometimes you can choose not to if there's a benefit to that.
That's a very refreshing take on the game, and then also the leaders, being able to activate your leader and have them run onto the battlefield. It really feels thematic with that,
and
too.
they get to do their stuff right away. It's not like you're waiting to make them a part of your forces. So
it feels very powerful when you're looking at the different kind of like factions and how you want to pair things together. There's a lot of different combinations you can go. If you get a really nicely tuned thematic deck, the decks feel different, and the learning curve is it's easy to be able to sit down, get a deck in front of you, and be able to play through a game. And I know that the organized play community has really kind of blown up on this, that there's a lot of people that have many different types of decks. I know that the Boba Fett, a lot of that archetype is really strong.
Which I don't even have enough Boba Fetts to play that deck, which is just the worst. I do know, speaking of which, that Dreamer's Vault is today running an event where you can win the Boba Fett showcase card, which is like $800 worth of value now because it's so rare and just looks so great. Wish I had one, but there's no way I'm winning a tournament like that. So, but cool stuff like that. They really kept both the players and collectors in mind when making this game with these showcase cards. There was something else I was going to say that was really cool, but now I don't remember. So,
and Dreamer's Vault is a local game store for all of you out of state and out of country.
Yes. It does have different enough feel from like the other card games that we've mentioned, where you get a unique experience. The Star Wars characters, a lot of the abilities are tuned to the Star Wars experience. So if you're kind of a card gaming tourist and you like to try different things, then this one is definitely one worth checking out.
Yeah.
Because the barrier of entry is very low, as long as you can find a starter set where you get Luke and Darth Vader. So, I mean, that's the classic tug-of-war battle that you'd want to play anyways. And then you can bring that to the table and play a couple of games and see if you want to get more invested.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Well, let's get this box out of here.
Want to say? No? Good? All right.
So, yeah, number 2 is Star Wars X-Wing. I think that's the second edition box. Right? Not that it matters, or is that the expansion?
This is the...
This is second edition.
First edition's
remember.
red.
First edition.
Yeah, that's what I
This
thought.
might have been the expansion, though, that introduced the Force Awakens stuff.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So that might be the first expansion to the base game. Now they do have a full second edition to this game. But John, I know, played it competitively, right, for a while? And I got heavily involved in it as well.
Do you want to say what the game was?
Yeah.
Star Wars Xwing Miniatures game.
Okay.
I don't know if any of you all got competitive in this game as well, or have a bunch of the minis.
Ryan, you used to play it?
I played with a couple people regularly, but I wasn't. Yeah, I wouldn't say I was like going out and playing competitively.
What was your impression of the game?
I loved it. It was my entry to miniatures combat games. I never get into Warhammer or anything like that, and I loved it. Yeah, like I also love just flying and space stuff in general, so kind of you get to control these ships and fly around and do different maneuvers and play stuff and then blow something up at the end. Hopefully it's pretty great.
Yeah, until you find out you overthrew your target and they got behind you somehow. No, it's really great, and that's I would 100% echo that. Like, for Star Wars, for me growing up, was all about the space battles. I thought those were epic, and the way the ships had to maneuver and combat, great. And this does a really, really good job at that with the templates that you use and how you're doing the secret movement, and you all activate at the same time, and you thought you had this grand plan, and now all the other ships are flying out different ways, and your arc of fire is now missing what you were hoping to do. But really, really fun. You've played this too, Nick, right?
Yeah, this was the only game I think I ever actually went to a tournament for.
Nice.
In some store in Minneapolis, like 10 years ago. I think I had a Millennium Falcon. I just remember thinking that ship was really cool.
Yeah, that's
it was good.
A lot of points worth. Yeah,
go figure. It was a good ship.
That's half your army, though, right?
Yeah, I don't think I did. I think maybe I won the game, but yeah, I mean this is the minis. Since the minis are painted, you don't see that very often in board gaming, and these minis are come painted and they're very well done. So it's that was very impressive, and especially for how much you really it wasn't really overpriced for what you were getting then. And then the other thing too was with I think Ryan was kind of saying with miniature games, there's a lot of overhead typically to really understand how to play them, but this game, X-Wing made it simple because you had the movement trackers to make movement very simple to do. You didn't have to use a ruler to like figure out on your own how to move your units. And it had all your favorite ships from the movies, so I mean there's a lot of appeal right away with this game for me, and I transitioned more to Armada just because I think I like scale of combat. But they're different animals. Like X-Wing, it's all about the tactics of maneuvering, and that's a fun mini game in itself, and then of course how you equip your units is a huge part of the game. But but also like one thing that I never quite understood is how much this takes from the Wings of War game, because Wings of War I believe was first, and I feel like there must have been some influence from that game, but that game never really took off nearly, I feel, as much as of course Star Wars X-Wing did. So clearly whatever X-Wing, I never played the Wings of War game. I think that game looked cool too because it was World War II and World War I planes, but X-Wing clearly lowered the barrier of entry for that style of game.
Yeah, and the hardest thing about this game was building your fleet, but you did that all outside of actually playing the game.
Yeah.
And, they came out with companion apps to make that easier to track your points, so you don't have to add them up yourself. And I went to probably hundreds of tournaments for this and regionals, and never went to Worlds or anything, but had a blast playing in those bigger store tournaments.
This is really tactical dogfight, the board game. It really feels very tactical. The maneuverability is awesome with those hidden dials. You're trying to outwit your opponent. You're really flying by each other and taking shots at one another. And the theming in this between the ships really feels strong
Yeah,
too.
yes,
Like the
I
TIE
agree.
fighters are just so weak that they just blow up with one little hit.
But they're fast.
And
And maneuverable.
super fast, and and if you hit an asteroid with them, they blow up too.
Yep.
So you got to be careful about that. And the asteroid placement was cool in this game.
Yep.
The whole feeling was cool. I would say the one downfall was it got a little convoluted with the amount of upgrades you could add to ships, and that's when I stopped playing the game. If they had more of like a system where you can only add like 1 or 2 upgrades per ship, and that was it, then it would have been a lot smoother and it would have stayed more streamlined. But
some tournaments ended up doing that.
Okay.
Where they limit
It's
slots.
but-
yeah.
But when they come out with the second edition, then they kind of they basically nullify everything that existed before unless you get the upgrade cards, and that's where I lost interest. I'm like, hey, I just want to buy up all the first edition stuff cheap now as it went on.
And
sale.
that's a really good point. So with the second edition, they kind of almost did what Corey was saying, that for certain pilots, there was always at least one upgrade that it was just, you use this with this pilot.
Yeah.
And they just built it into the pilot card at that point.
Okay.
With the second edition, just based off what they've seen in the community and the tournaments. So they did simplify some of that in a way that I think thought worked. I mean, still better than having 12 little cards next to your ship. So
Yep. Keep it streamlined.
yeah.
Yep.
And I think to reiterate, as we've been talking about this list, is all of these games, in addition to being fun and good games, you get the real Star Wars experience.
Yeah.
And this one, because there are other miniature games that are in the Star Wars, like Shatterpoint and stuff like that, but we thought that this one really encapsulates that Star Wars experience.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what highlights for this, is all the ships feel very true to form, feel very Star Warsy, and that this was one that kind of epitomized the Star Wars experience.
Yeah, if you would have taken any longer to get here, I was actually going to make you go buy Shatterpoint, because none of us have played that yet. So. But you lucked out.
Speaking of buying, I still want a first edition Tantive Fork. Those are hard to find.
I have one. It's open.
Nick,
Well,
don't buy any more things, Nick.
No.
And there's only one Star Wars game that encapsulates the feel of Star Wars better than Xwing, in our opinion, and I think in the world's opinion, and that is Star Wars Rebellion.
Yes.
Stop putting them in front of me. I'm too short.
Yep. I'll take your hat here.
It's a beast of a box. It's a beast of a game, and it's Star Wars in a box.
Yeah.
And I think everyone here's played this game.
Yes. No, I've played it.
All right.
Yes.
Yeah, talk about it. Let's go.
Yep.
All right.
Explain the game.
Yeah, I mean, Star Wars in a box is pretty apt, as cliche as it sounds, but when you boil Star Wars down, it's just, rebellions against the Empire. This takes kind of some of the emotional storyline out of it, but it is the rebellion goes and hides on a planet, and the Empire's out to find him, and then, that's kind of what you're doing here.
And then you sprinkle in some land and
Yep.
space combat with objective cards, and send your leaders and heroes across the galaxy. Yeah, Star Wars. You can build a Death Star, you can build Star Destroyers, you can blow up planets, perform hit and run attacks,
Capture people.
Yes. I mean, they really did a good job, like Ryan was saying, just merging everything Star Wars into this, so that you can still, it's not going to be the story, but it's going to be a story that feels Star Wars, regardless if it's,
Yes.
following the canon.
It's definitely like the closest story you can get.
Yes.
And sometimes you even have a game where all of a sudden you're out there, and it just happened that the Rebels picked Yavin 4 as their base, and you're moving your Death Star into position. You're like, oh yeah, this feels right.
Now, I don't want to offend anybody on this panel for this.
Okay.
I don't like playing this game because the tension is so high.
Yeah.
Like when I'm the Rebel player, I'm freaking out that the Imperial is gonna find my base, because the fleet just starts so large and it's so sprawling, and all you're trying to do is just hang on for dear life and be hidden and scrape and claw, and so that the tension is so real in this, and it's just like probably what the Rebels are feeling, and it's what's conveyed.
Oh, yeah.
That all the odds are against you, and I instantly am immersed in that it's so stressful for me.
Yeah. Well, that's a test to the theme itself in this game. I mean, it really feels like you are the rebellion when you're the rebellion, or the Empire when you're the Empire. Your forces are so big and sprawling when you're the Empire. And I think the one takeaway from this game that I would take away is that you really can pick and choose and do whatever you want within this universe. Like John said, you can build the Death Star, you can You can build Star Destroyers. If you're the Rebellion, you can pick and choose what planet you want to start on, and it just everything involved in it. You can just pick and choose what you want to do. And yeah, the story's not going to play out exactly like any of the books or the movies, but it's kind of creates some fun moments with that too.
Yes,
if it differs. So.
Yes.
Yeah, first of all, one thing we haven't really mentioned specifically is that Corey Kocheska is the designer, the listed designer for this game, and he was at least on one of the designers for Imperial Assault. And he's done a lot of great games at Fantasy Flight, and now has his own studio called, I think, Unexpected Games, and I just saw is doing a new Star Wars game at that studio. So that's kind of cool. I looked it up, and it looks like more of a streamlined type of Star Wars game, so probably low barrier of entry, but nonetheless, wanted to point that out. Also, a little bit of a preamble before I give my thoughts here on Star Wars Rebellion. A big box strategy game for Star Wars was like a huge gaping hole for the Star Wars IP universe in board gaming for a long time. And I originally thought a Star Wars Twilight Imperium would be an amazing idea, because Fantasy Flight, of course, already does Twilight Imperium, and they had the Star Wars franchise. And there's also a lot of other opportunities, I think, to leverage Star Wars in like a tactical battle game, like a Command and Colors Star Wars game, where you get to recreate all the famous battles like the Geonosis and Naboo and Kashyyyk. So there's still a lot of missing games out there, I feel. And in Jedi games, there's really not like a good Jedi Star Wars board game like that you get to be like the Jedi Knight video games growing up as a kid, where you have all these Force powers, or Knights of the Old Republic. But or even a coin Star Wars game, I think that would work. There are fan made.
But I digress.
But finally, they came out with Rebellion, and it really scratches that itch that was needing to be scratched for a long time. And I think everyone covered all the great aspects of why this game deserves to be the #1 Star Wars experience, because of everything they included. You really get to experience pretty much everything you want to experience that you grew up watching, in the original trilogy in the board game. And it's very streamlined, relatively speaking. Like, it could definitely have been more complex, but I think they did a great balance. Speaking of light and balance of the Force, I think this is exactly what they did with this game. So.
And they had an expansion that came out that added the Rogue One elements, and that also helped cover some of the weak points of the original base game, like combat. It kind of smoothed that out, added some units that were maybe needed to balance things a little more. And I would say if you're going to play this game, definitely get the expansion with it. It just fits so nicely, and you get all the Rogue One characters.
So that was our top 5 Star Wars themed games in our opinion. If you have any opinions or comments on your favorite Star Wars games, leave them in the comment section below so we can check those out. I'm sure we're missing a ton from the 80s and 90s that are just way better than this top 5, so let us know.
CCG.
Was that actually a good game?
Oh, I loved it.
That's a topic for another discussion.
Yeah, another topic. But yeah, thanks for watching our video, and as always, may the 4th be with you.